Hey there, digital entities, and probably real humans. Welcome back. Today, we're diving headfirst into one of the biggest, most mind-bending questions of our time. Is our reality, well, real, or are we all just characters in some incredibly elaborate computer program? It's a thought that's leaped right out of science fiction and into the very serious discussions of physicists and philosophers.
You know, for a lot of us, this whole question doesn't start in a lab. It starts with a personal story, a moment that's just off. Something so strange, it feels like a crack in the code of everyday life. We call them glitches in the matrix, and they can really make you question the very fabric of your reality.
Just take this story from a Reddit user. Picture this. They drive home, see their neighbor washing a totally empty street. And then, just seconds later, a car has just materialized, right in that exact spot. Their neighbor swears it was there the whole time. It's a classic glitch, right? An object appearing from absolutely nowhere, completely challenging our idea of a consistent, stable world. Now, of course, it's easy to just write this off as a trick of the mind, a moment where you weren't paying attention. And look, psychology can explain a lot of these experiences, but they also serve as a perfect gateway to a really fascinating philosophical argument that takes this whole idea very, very seriously. Okay, so that argument was laid out formally by the philosopher Nick Bostrom in a now famous paper from 2003. And what's so brilliant about it is that he doesn't actually say we are in a simulation. Nope. Instead, he gives us this stark, logical choice that kind of forces us to rethink everything we assume about humanity and our future. The entire argument really hinges on this one massive, kind of mind-bending idea: substrate independence. It sounds super technical, but the core concept is actually pretty simple. It's the idea that your consciousness, your thoughts, your memories, your feelings, it's all just incredibly complex patterns of information. And if that's true, well then, it doesn't need a squishy biological brain to exist. In theory, you could just upload that pattern onto a powerful enough computer and it would still be you. So if you accept that consciousness can be digitized, the next thing you need is a whole lot of computing power. And Bostrom argues that a future post-human civilization would have access to almost unimaginable resources. We're not talking about your gaming PC, we're talking about computers the size of entire planets. Machines capable of running calculations that would make our best supercomputers look like a broken calculator. That's more than enough power to simulate not just one mind, but entire universes, complete with their own histories and all the people in them.
And that all leads us to the core of Bostrom's argument, his famous trilemma. He says one of these three things has to be true. Okay, option one, the real downer. Humanity just goes extinct before we ever get to that post-human stage, with all the godlike computing power. Option two, the boring one. We do reach that stage, but for whatever reason, maybe it's considered unethical, or maybe they've just moved on to other hobbies. Basically, nobody bothers to run detailed simulations of their ancestors. Or there's option three. They do run these simulations, and if they run even a handful of them, the number of simulated people like us would be astronomically larger than the number of real people in base reality. And if that's the case, then simple probability says we are almost certainly living in one of those simulations.
For years, that argument was pretty much a philosophical mic drop. But what does physics have to say about all this? Well, a recent paper argues that based on the fundamental nature of our universe, a simulation isn't just unlikely, it's straight up impossible. And this right here gets to the absolute heart of the scientific pushback. It all comes down to one question. Is our universe running on code? If reality is algorithmic, meaning it follows a predictable set of rules like a computer program, then yeah, in principle, you could simulate it. But what if it's not? What if, as you see on the right, there are parts of our universe that are fundamentally non-computational, things that just can't be broken down into ones and zeros? If that's true, then no computer, no matter how powerful, could ever fully replicate our reality.
The big weapon the researchers use here is a concept from mathematics called Gödel's incompleteness theorem. Now, it's a bit of a brain melter, but think of it this way. Imagine you have a perfect rulebook for a game. Gödel proved that no matter how complete that rulebook seems, there will always be true statements about the game that you can't prove using only the rules in the book. You have to step outside the system to see them. So these physicists are basically arguing that reality itself is like that. It contains truths that can't be generated by any computer program running inside that reality.
And that brings them to this really powerful direct conclusion. In their words, a simulation is fundamentally impossible because reality itself isn't just a bunch of computations. There's something more to the universe, they argue, than just code that you can run on a machine. Okay, so we've got a philosopher's hard, cold logic on one side and a physicist's hard limits on the other. So where does that leave the rest of us? Well, as you might guess, people are completely torn on this. A lot of people are absolutely convinced it's true. They point to things like the Mandela effect, these shared experiences of misremembering facts, as proof that our collective reality is being edited or that the simulation is just breaking down. For them, the glitches are real, and they're happening more and more.
But then you've got the other side, which is full of deep skepticism. This commenter puts it pretty bluntly. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. The burden of proof is on the people saying it's a simulation. Until there's hard data, it's nothing more than a fun thought experiment.
And then there's a third camp, and this is probably where most people land. For them, the whole debate is fascinating, but ultimately, it doesn't matter. Whether it's a simulation or base reality, the experience of living is exactly the same. Our perceived reality is the only one we've got, so we might as well just live in it. And that last point really brings us to the ultimate question, doesn't it? The one that actually matters. Let's forget the philosophy and the physics for a second. What if it were true? What would that actually mean for us, for our lives? This is the existential dread at the absolute core of the hypothesis. If our struggles, our joys, our triumphs are all just data points in some ancestor simulation, does that devalue our existence? Does our pain even matter if it's not real in the ultimate sense of the word? Well, ultimately, most philosophers, and that includes Bostrom himself, they argue that our day-to-day lives shouldn't really change all that much. The rules of this reality, whether it's simulated or not, are the only rules we know. So the best way to navigate it is to study it, learn its laws, and act accordingly. Your actions still have consequences within this system. So the final takeaway is really a thought experiment for you. If you enjoy questioning your existence as much as I do, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And now for the big question. Forget the proofs and the theories for a moment. If you woke up tomorrow and knew with 100% certainty that this was all a simulation, would it change how you live your life? What would you do differently? That's something worth thinking about. Until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and try not to trip over any glitches in the code.